Hi. How do you like to be addressed? Like, do you go by Andrew or do you go by something else? Do you have a nickname?
If you just call me sir, then that would be proficient,
Would that
really.
suffice? Yeah.
Well,
Because,
no, I mean, call me Andrew. Why are you asking me now?
well,
How long have we known each other? Almost a year now.
I was
It's a bit late.
when you're gonna pick up the call, I was gonna be like, oh hey, and then I didn't really know what to call you because I've never addressed you by name. Which,
You've never addressed me by name.
no, I don't think I've ever addressed you by name, and I don't go by Andrew normally. Get,
Hmm.
I've been called Lawson my entire life.
I was talking about you to someone the other day, and I called you Lawson.
Why? Thank you very much. I'm honoured. Actually, no. Was it nice? Was it good things?
Mostly bad things.
It's to be expected. Most people say bad things about me.
But yeah,
Mostly it's to my
I've,
face, though.
the thing is that I think of you as Andrew, and I think I would call you Andrew if I ever was going to. I feel weird calling you Lawson though, because I feel like I'm calling you a name that other people will recognize you by,
Why is
and
that weird?
because that's not the name that I think of you as primarily. I think of you as Andrew.
If I
But
were
if
to
you,
introduce myself to people, I would say my name's Andrew because they'd be like, if I said my name's Lawson, they'd be like, who's this smug prick?
It'd
But
be like, oh, Wilson.
yeah, yeah,
How do you feel about the name Andy?
I despise the name Andy. I almost swore. I didn't. I'm going to try and not swear. Given now that I tag the episode's explicit, I'm going to try and not use the F word this time. But no, I can't stand the name Andy.
Thing is, I've thought about listing us out as the presenters of this show, the hosts of the show, and saying Andrew and Lawson.
Presenters.
But yeah, but that feels weird to say Andrew and Lawson because your name is Andrew Lawson. It feels like I'm just putting an and in the middle of your name.
I no, I think that's good. I think we should do that. Shall we move on to movie trilogies?
Yep.
So the format for this, if I can pull up the document, we're gonna go through our top three. Fuck! I've lost my cursor. Damn it! I swore. Damn it! I'll edit that out. We're gonna go through our top movie trilogies.
Yeah.
What was the first movie trilogy you remember seeing?
Um, Probably Star Wars, I would say.
I don't really understand trilogies. Like, I don't know why they're a thing. I don't know why people decided on three. Maybe it's like the story structure of movies, so that they're meant to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. That studios choose to make three, or creators choose to make three. But
Hmm.
I've never really gotten it. Like,
I think it's less about that. Like, it's not like on day one they decide we're going to make three movies. It's more like they make the first one, then they're like, this is expandable. This made a lot of money. We
no,
can
no, I
make
know, but why did
probably.
they decide on three? Like, why don't they decide on four, or five, or two? Like, why is it always three? Because there are
Mm,
certain movies where they make like where they make the first one makes a lot of money, and they decide to make more. And examples of that would be The Matrix or Pirates of the Caribbean and films like that, or like Spider-Man and films like that. But why three? That was
maybe it's just because people like things in triplets.
You would think that that would mirror in other parts of our culture, but it doesn't really. I don't know.
I think we should talk because we compiled this list of trilogies, and there were some that didn't make the cut. And the reason is because we had this discussion: what counts as a trilogy? And I think this is interesting because I want to start with one that didn't make the cut, and I'm very
Is it
upset about it.
divisive because I made the rules and you don't agree with my rules?
I tried to make some rules, and you refused to adopt the rules. You just went with your rules.
Yeah, my rules are
So
better.
no, they're not though. Right? Okay. So I haven't actually got the list of ones which aren't included.
Basically, you want to include the Hunger Games, and I won't let you because it's not three movies; it's four.
Yeah, right. Okay, so let's start with the Hunger Games, right? The Hunger Games is based on three books. It's a series of movies based on three books. One movie for each book, except
Except they didn't do that.
the third book, they've decided to split it into two movies, which are called Part One and Part Two. I would argue because it's based directly on three individual books, this is still kind of a
It's
trilogy.
not a trilogy.
And the reason that I really was wanting to have this included is because I have bad words to say about the Hunger Games, quote unquote, trilogy movies because they went downhill and The fact that they split out the last one is kind of what upset me because they didn't need to split it out at
Yeah,
all.
they could have made it a trilogy, but they didn't. They made
They
it
could have,
four.
yeah.
There's a great analogy on the Empire podcast where the guy said that the first movie is essentially like the opening scene of Return of the Jedi, because all they do is save Peeta, I think his name is. Like that's the whole story of that part. It's like what they go in and try and save. It's just like when they try and save Han Solo at the beginning of Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And then the second movie is just insulting. I went to the cinema to see it, and I was like, "Come on, guys, you are so obviously stretching this." You know, that was probably the worst film that I've seen at the cinema.
Wow.
Another movie
Right,
that
so are you happy that we got past the thing because you weren't allowed to talk about the Hunger Games, but now you've talked about the Hunger Games?
let's talk about something that made the cut but shouldn't have made the cut. Pirates of the Caribbean. You were like, "Oh no, that counts as a trilogy." And Pirates of the Caribbean is 4 films. Unarguably, it's
Well,
four
it's
films.
well, no, it's 5
They have-
films now because they're about to bring out another one.
I think these rules don't really stand up to scrutiny. You just put in the ones that you want to talk about.
Well, no, because I'm not going to talk about almost any of these. It was just a rule. I just didn't think that Hunger Games, Hunger Games was never intended to be a trilogy. Is it on your list of top 3?
Well, no, because you've banned it.
Would it have been because you didn't like it?
It wouldn't have been on my list of top
There you
3,
go.
but we have different categories.
Basically, what happened was I made the Google Doc and I just did a brain dump of just throwing down some stuff, and then you've taken this as like scripture that you have to stick to. But
Okay. Well, this is what I think will work, right? For me, I haven't seen that many trilogies. I realized this when I was looking down the list, which isn't especially good for a 45-minute episode on trilogies, but nevertheless. So we've got 3 categories which you wrote down. And actually, I thought they were all really really good and great ideas. So the first category is the trilogy with the most satisfying ending. I have picked a movie for this. You either have already or you're about to pick a movie as I'm talking. So I'll go first. For my trilogy with the most satisfying ending, I am going with Toy Story. So Toy Story 3, I felt like in the run up to it, there was a lot of skepticism towards it. People were, me as well, I was kind of like, do we need a third Toy Story film? Like, the story has been told, we know what we like. Those 2 films are back to back. Why do we need a third film a decade later?
there was an
But
air to don't mess with what is currently seen as like a perfect couple of movies.
yeah, exactly. And then everyone that went to see the movie was like, you have to see the third movie. It's amazing. It's a perfect ending, is what people were saying. And then I went to see it, and I totally agree. It was the best Toy Story movie, I think.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It went back to the story where the previous 2 movies had just been like the adventures of these toys through different scenarios when this kid is the owner of these toys, and then it went back a decade later, and this movie was about moving on and growing up and life changes and stuff like that, and it really just closed the chapter on the entire series, and it really did do a great job of providing an ending to these
And some
characters.
closure to where these guys are going to go.
Yeah, and the ending I think touched a lot of people. So
it was the highest grossing animated movie until Frozen came out. It was nominated for Best Picture as well. It's like one of like 3 animated movies that's been nominated for Best Picture. The other 2 being Up and Beauty and the Beast. So it was critically and commercially pretty successful.
Yeah, and deservedly so. It was a great
yeah, it
film.
was incredible.
Have you seen that edit that somebody did where they showed their mum the Toy Story 3, but they cut it? So they cut it. You know the bit where they're falling into the big, what is it, like a lava thing? They're about to fall into fire, and then they get saved by the aliens. And just as they're falling into the fire, it fades to black, and then the credits start. In this guy's cut, and he showed it to his mum and filmed the reaction of his mum. It was quite funny. We'll put it in the show notes.
I've not seen that. Does she cry?
I think she's just like, this isn't the ending.
Are you doing an American accent again?
This is me back with my American accent.
We have spoken about your American accent.
But yeah. Anyway,
I'm going to put it in the rules. No eating, no drinking, No American accents during recording.
Are these rules series rules, or are these just off the top of your head? Can
These
be
are
changed?
after serious discussion.
Okay.
After living through your American accent 3 times now, it's not allowed. Right.
Okay, fine.
My trilogy with the most satisfying ending. Gonna go with Return of the Jedi, I think. No. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Return of the Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Return of the Jedi is probably is the original Star Wars trilogy. Are we allowed to count Star Wars as a trilogy, given that there's 7 movies?
Yeah, we're going to count it, I think, as 2 trilogies and 1 trilogy in the making. So.
Right, yeah, because there's like the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy, and the sequel trilogy, where the
Yep.
original trilogy is 4, 5, and 6. Yeah, I think that the wrap up that they do is incredibly satisfying. With it's got the redemption of Darth Vader. Oh, also spoiler alert for like a lot of movies, I'm gonna say, but yeah, it's got an incredibly satisfying ending. I don't have much else to say about it because I'm not gonna. We've spoken about Star Wars at length. You can go listen to episode 1 where we talk about episodes 1 through 6 for 2 hours, and I pretty much give all my thoughts on it then. But it's my least favorite movie of the original trilogy, but it is the most satisfying ending to a film.
Yeah, I knew that it was your least favorite, which is why it's interesting that you think it's the most satisfying ending. The bit that I didn't like from that ending was, you know, when they're flying over the crowds of people and you've got all the people waving up and it's just like streams and crowds of people. I thought that bit was a little bit too much.
That was added in the special edition. That shouldn't be there.
Was
Like
it
with
really?
the cities and everything. Yeah, that's not in the original ending.
Really? Because I feel like I don't want to criticize it because this is decades later and we've learned a lot about what works and what doesn't. And I didn't want to be like nitpicky about that one thing, so I was like, I'll not really mention it because other than that, it's really good and it's actually my favorite Star Wars film. Apart from the new, I prefer the new one actually. But in the original trilogy, I prefer that one. But that was the nitpicky thing. There was 2 nitpicky things actually about it. There was that, and the other thing which I've previously mentioned is the fact that they used the actor who plays
Hayden Christensen.
Yeah, they used Hayden Christensen who plays Anakin in episodes 2 and 3. They put him as a ghost, and I wasn't sure whether they did, because I couldn't remember from the first time I'd watched it. I wasn't sure if they cast Hayden Christensen because he looks exactly like this guy, or whether they'd done it retrospectively, and it turns out retrospectively. So it seems that the 2 things that I didn't like from the end of this film were added later on.
Yeah, it's just more proof that the special editions did what they could to fuck up the original trilogy. Damn, I swear again.
Interesting. So now you have a non-biased view, really, because I didn't know anything of these things, and I've just given you my opinion. And you've been able to go, yep, both of those things, both of those negative points were added later.
Thank you, George Lucas. Right, so the next in the categories that I made up on the spot when I was making this document are trilogies where one movie lets down the entire series.
Well, the last movie lets down the entire series, right? Or just any of them?
Doesn't matter.
I've made a choice. In the choice that I've went with, the last movie is the one that lets down the series.
That's typically how it goes, because third acts are really hard. But in the
generally, if you fuck up the second movie, you don't get. Generally, if you do badly on the second movie, you don't get a third one. I have chosen the Santa Claus.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is that the one that's got Tim, whoever his name is?
Yes. Yes, that guy.
Tim Lightyear, Buzz Lightyear.
Yeah. So I'm going to summarize.
Tim Allen, that's his name.
Yeah. So the first movie, the dad accidentally kills Santa. He puts on the suit because he's cold. And inside of the suit, there's a card which has a clause, like a little contract on it, which says that if you put on the suit and you get in the sleigh, then you become Santa Claus and you have no say in the matter. This already, just trying to explain the fact that he accidentally kills Santa, I can't remember how. I think Santa's on the roof and he scares him or something. Yeah, he goes outside in just his pants, I think, and then he kills Santa, and then his son's suggestion for how to not be as cold is, you should put on the suit of the dead guy who just fell off the roof. That'll be a good idea, and then you'll be warm. Like, instead of just going back inside of the house and getting his own clothes. Like, I find this difficult to even try and make it sound reasonable.
I'm
But anyway,
interested to find out why you're discussing this trilogy at all.
well, hang on, because I, other than that one thing, the first movie is really good. I like it. The first movie, yeah. So the plot of the first movie is he becomes Santa Claus, against his will, and he ends up quite liking it and happily ever after. Then they made a second movie. In the second movie, there's another clause about 6 years down the line, where where he has to get married and have a wife, or he doesn't get to be Santa Claus anymore. And so I think he spends the movie finding a wife and getting married and all happily ever after at the end. And then the third movie in the series is where they introduce Jack Frost as a new character. And Jack Frost tries to take the job from Santa. And it's all about that. And then Santa also has the in-laws over to visit. And there's a lot of pandemonium with that and trying to please them. It's a terrible film. Like, don't watch it. It's so disappointing.
I've just looked them up, and I've decided that it is my new favourite because it's called the Santa Clause with an E in the clause, like a clause in a contract.
Yeah.
That's smart. I like it. I'm on board.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
That's why the film. That's kind of why the first film is so good. It's just like, it's so clever. Every time you say the name, it's the Santa Claus. Yeah, it's a clause in a contract. But yeah, the third film sucks. I wouldn't watch it. If you're going to watch it, I would watch the first film. Maybe if you have some time, you could watch the second film, but don't bother with the third film. It's a load of crap.
All right.
So that's my nomination for the trilogy where the last movie let down the series. What is your nomination for this category?
Right. I have 2.
Mm-hmm.
3. 4? No, I've got 3. No, 4. I've got 4. Right.
Can we limit it to 1?
Right, okay, cool. I'll fire through a couple. So no, basically. My honourable mention for this one is the Spider-Man trilogy, where the first 2 are absolutely incredible, and the third one is a piece of shit because the studio interfered and made Sam Raimi introduce a villain that he didn't want to use, so he had to sort of merge his story with their story, where they wanted to use Venom because Venom's a big character in the comics and he's a very valuable character and he's kind of cool. So he was like, well, I'll make a really crap version of Venom so you can't use him again. And they haven't used him again. And the movie is pretty awful. But the first 2 in that trilogy are incredible. But the one I'm actually going to choose is The Godfather. Even though The Godfather 3 was nominated for Best Picture, it shouldn't have been. But The Godfather and The Godfather 2 are like these perfect 2 movies, where it's like the story of a family, and it's about how Michael Corleone comes into power in the first one and takes over the family after his dad dies, and then the sequel is like told in like 2 parts. So the first part is, have you seen The Godfather 2?
Nope.
It's got 2 timelines. One of the timelines is played by Robert De Niro, who plays Marlon Brando's character, and he plays like when he comes to America for the first time. So it's like him starting off and getting into the world of like the families and the crime of New York. And alongside that, you've got Al Pacino's storyline, where he is at the head of the family, and it's about people try to double cross him and him try to keep control of the family and everything that happens, and it's absolutely incredible. And then the third one they made because Francis Ford Coppola needed some money. It's just terrible. Like everyone's just sort of phoning it in. Some people refuse to come back, and it's a movie that shouldn't be made because the first 2 were so perfect that the third one is just awful. That's all I have to say. The Godfather. That's what I thought of. Right.
Are these notable mentions, or is that your choice?
That's my choice. The Godfather's my choice.
All right, cool. Anything else you want to talk about? Any other ones where the last movie? Because the thing is that I think most trilogies, you could argue, are kind of in that category.
Except my top 3. My top 3 don't have that problem.
Yeah. There's actually a thing where.
Well, the problem with the third...
This is a theory that I have with storytelling, right? Okay. Where I think that when you join a story, there is a lot of coincidence that happens and a lot of events that happen which lead the character to this extraordinary point where you join them, and you accept that because you're listening to you're joining this story, and the reason that it's a story and it's interesting is because this interesting thing has happened. So you accept everything that happens up to that point.
The
right?
reason it's a story and that it's interesting is that it's interesting. Carry on.
No, this is a serious point. You're like,
I'm sure
you're
it
making fun of it.
Yep, carry on.
I want to start again now. So when you have a story, and
it's interesting. Yes.
All right, when you have
I'm
a
on board.
story. No, I'm trying to, like, I've thought this through in my head.
This isn't real shit.
I didn't picture telling this insightful thing in my head with you interrupting me every two words.
I cannot wait to hear your insightful words of wisdom. Carry on.
So when you have a story, the point at which the reader or the viewer joins the story is where a lot of interesting stuff has happened to get you to that point. So you kind of accept everything interesting that's happened before that, because you wouldn't be like a part of the story if it wasn't interesting. But everything that happens after that point, I think there can only be so much coincidence. And I think this is a reason that a lot of trilogies fall down, is that a lot of the sequels and the trilogies are based on, oh, well, this amazing set of things happened in the first film. But then the second film would you believe it? This other set of amazing events happened that affect this person, totally unrelated to the first set of events. And kind of that, I think that's why it falls down. It's like, yeah, I'm not really believing it. Do you see what I mean?
No, I don't really understand what you're talking about. So you can,
Right, okay,
there's only so
so-
much coincidence that can
alright.
happen in a 9 hour, in a set of events in somebody's life.
No, I think after you join the story and after you've accepted everything up to that point, there's only so much coincidence, unrelated coincidence, that can come afterwards.
But why has it got to do with
let
coincidence?
me-
Not all stories and all movies have to do with various events just happening by coincidence.
Okay, so I haven't seen Die Hard 2, but I was talking to somebody the other day who was telling me about it. And Die Hard 1 is this guy who happens to be in this building where this terrorist event happens, and then he takes out all the terrorists. He's the hero, goes home at the end of the day. Die Hard 2, by the way, if you haven't seen Die Hard 1, there are Die Hard spoilers, and if you just want
I said earlier on that there were spoilers for loads of movies, so you don't need to do that for every film you talk about.
Okay, so Die Hard 2, somebody told me that there is a terrorists take over a plane, and this same guy's
It's
wife
not a plane, it's an airport.
takes over an airport. Okay, and the same guy's wife is she on an airplane or is she just in the airport?
She's on a plane. So what happens in Die Hard 2 is Dulles Airport in Washington
Oh, I hate that airport.
at Christmas, and there's a terrorist due to land in the airport. So, and he's a captive at the time. So they have the terrorist group take over the airport so that they can control the landing of the plane and free the guy, because they want to free the prisoner. And then at the same time, they have control over all the planes that are in the sky, one of which has John McClane's wife. Basically, that movie is seen as the worst of the trilogy. It's not a trilogy anymore because they made 5, and it's no longer the worst one because the 5th one is garbage. But it was seen as a weak point because it was just a retelling of the first one in a different setting. It was like the same,
Right.
and he even says it because it's a very self-aware movie. He even says, "How can the same shit happen to the same guy twice?"
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Right, but I don't think that's got anything to do with trilogies. I think that's just got to do with bad storytelling.
Yeah, but trilogies often come with that kind of bad storytelling.
Yeah,
It's
but
like,
they don't have to, because if you
'cause
look
the
at
end of the-
if you look
the
at
end
the
of the-
Indiana Jones film series, they're like the first, like they were originally 3 and then they made 4, but they're 3 completely separate movies that stand apart.
Yeah.
And so the same with the Star Wars films. They stand like you can watch each one and you don't have to have seen other ones.
I'm not saying it happens every time.
I just think
I
think you're just describing bad storytelling. I think that where writers run into trouble is that if you're trying to wrap something up, you're left with an incredible amount to do in the third film. If you look at like The Matrix 3 as an example, you create an immersive experience, an immersive like situation where a set of characters are in, and then you need to tie that all together neatly in the third film, and that makes you very constrained because you've got a 2-hour window where you've got to create a compelling story, tie that up and tie up everything that happened in the first two also. And I think that's what makes trilogies hard to make successful, because you have an awful lot to achieve and you're constrained by where you have to take the characters at the end. But at the same time, you're writing the story, so they don't have to go through anything that you don't want them to, because you're in control, because you're writing everything down. So I don't know. I think that talking about coincidence is basically, it's just a result of bad storytelling. If they just put them through
it is.
Yeah,
that's
you have
completely
to,
that's completely right. But I'm just saying that
to,
I think a lot of trilogies go down that route, and that's why they end up terrible.
Okay, so shall we go into the next thing?
Yes. So the last nomination before we go on to best trilogy is the trilogy with one incredible movie, and I have nominated Jurassic Park, the first movie of Jurassic Park, because I think it is just, I think it's just like, I think it's phenomenal, and it's phenomenal in hindsight. If you watch it again now, it's great. By the way, I'm counting it as a trilogy. I know there's a fourth one. I've seen the fourth one. But that is the fourth one, right? They didn't make any...
The fourth one is the start of a sequel trilogy.
Right, okay. Yeah, the first Jurassic Park
Did you see the re-release? The 3D re-release of Jurassic Park?
No.
It was unbelievable.
Really?
Yeah, I went to the cinema to see it. I hate 3D movies, but I went to the cinema to see it because I love... Jurassic Park is one of my favourite movies of all time. Yeah. And so I'm on board with your decision, and it was incredible to see it at the cinema.
Yeah, and it really does stand the test of time, because I think I watched it again last year, and it really is as good as it was the first time. It's breathtaking. The music from John Williams is incredible again. Just everything about it. It's so new. It's so fresh. It's so original. I just loved it. And then the other movies, I can't remember that much. I guess they were okay. Maybe not. But
no, they're really not. The second one is not great, and the third one is pretty poor. The third one's also like an hour and 20 minutes long or something like that. It just sort of happens.
Like they're just like, oh, here's a bunch of footage of things. Well, yeah. Anyway, the first film was standout and just incredible.
I have to pick one now.
Yep.
Right. So, I would either go with The Matrix or Silence of the Lambs.
Mm-hmm.
Because Silence of the Lambs is one of my favourite films. It won the Big Five at the Academy Awards, so it won Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, and Best Actress. I think it holds the record for the shortest amount of time someone spends on screen and wins a Best Actor award, because I think Anthony Hopkins is only on screen for like 16 minutes or something weird like that, and he won a Best Actor award for that. And I think it's a great movie. I don't know if it stands up today, because the problem with these movies is technology moves forward, and if it was to happen again right now, you would solve that problem in a completely different way. But in a little bubble, I think it's really good. The same with The Matrix. I think The Matrix is one of the best science fiction movies ever made, and I think that the sequels they don't do justice to what they did. I think the animated movie, The Animatrix, was better than either of the sequels. But although Matrix Reloaded is like the highest grossing R-rated movie of all time worldwide, I think it made a huge amount of money. But yeah, so I'm gonna go with The Matrix, actually. As much as I love Silence of the Lambs, I'm gonna go with The Matrix.
Awesome. So I have a nomination for my favourite trilogy. I've just done one because I'm going to go back to this. I'm going to revert to my previous statement of I've not seen that many, and I kind of felt like I was crashing into the same ones all the time. So I've picked one, which I think is safely a favourite trilogy. And you could put Star Wars on that list, but Star Wars isn't the one I've gone for. My favourite trilogy is one that I saw for the first time last year. It's a few decades old, and watching it, people had told me, like, you will love these movies, you need to watch these movies, and I'd never gotten around to it. And last year I watched Back to the Future, and it was incredible, and I love it. And I haven't seen them again yet, but I definitely will at some point, probably quite soon. I just loved all three movies. I've heard since then people have been like, "Oh, I didn't like." I think the second movie is the one people didn't like. And like I can totally understand why they didn't like it, but just the theme of the whole thing and the whole adventure of it all, it just like really appealed to me. It was like right up my street. So I loved all three of those movies. If I was to rate them and choose the best one, I would choose the first one, just because I think it's most original. The second one,
Yeah, what I was going to ask about the best trilogies for the top three, of which you've chosen one, is what's the best movie, what's the worst movie, and what's your favourite?
wait, sorry, say that again.
What's the best movie, what's the worst movie, and what's your favourite?
Right, let me hang on 1 second. I just want to, because I watched these movies kind of back to back, so I just want to be clear where the boundaries are drawn between each one and make sure I don't get it confused.
Normally when the credits roll in one and you start watching the second one, that's normally where that lies.
I think that Back to the Future, the part one was the best one, and the worst one's probably somewhere between two or three. People complain about those movies. I think two was most interesting because it was set last year, and it was interesting to look at that because I was watching it for the first time, remember, and so I was I wasn't. It wasn't like a lot of people I think saw it decades ago, obviously, and so they've noted the progression towards that movie in terms of like where we've went in technology and stuff. But I saw it fresh and so I could immediately be like, okay, that's different. This is kind of the same. So it was the second one was really interesting watching it in 2015. So I would say that the second was probably the second best for me, and then the third was the least best. But I like them. I like all of those movies. So
sorry, so best, worst, and what's your favorite? You would say
best. Wait. How can I say how would my best be different from my favorite?
like because the best and your favorite are very seldom the same thing. Like if you're looking at like the Beatles, if you're looking at the Beatles, like what your favorite Beatles album might not be the best Beatles album. Like
if I'm to say the best, am I saying what do I think will be the best for a general audience?
like for cinematography, best made, best produced film, like what? But and then your favorite, because you might hold an emotional attachment to it. You might have sentimental things about like the situation you were when you saw it. You might have like the second one you were talking about how it's got a connection to it projecting towards last year, and like there could be something you hold to that, or there could be memories you hold around it. Like so the best and your favorite are not always the same.
Okay, having said that, I'm going to say that the best and my most favorite are the first movie, yeah, for the different reasons that you just specified. But I would say that they're both the first movie.
Cool.
Because it's original, and it was my introduction to the series, and it was magical. So there we go.
It's magical. Okay.
Not as magical as Harry Potter, but I couldn't squeeze that into the trilogy. I'd be pushing it at that point. So.
No, it's definitely not a trilogy. Cool. Right. So you keeping me to this f***ing document that I've written on an offhand, and then you've gone against it at the last moment. So I do have three. Actually, no. Yeah, I do have three. But I'm not going to talk about three because I feel awkward now. But my top two would be between The Lord of the Rings and the Dark Knight trilogy.
Okay.
Two trilogies I know that you've either not seen or don't care for.
Wait. I've seen Lord of the Rings twice.
But you don't care for it.
I don't care for it.
That's what I said. So you either haven't seen or don't care for.
Yeah, but it kind of made it sound like I don't know.
Good. Right. I was trying to do some research because, every now and then I try and do my homework. And this one was the easiest one to do the homework for because I like watching movies. It's easy to do because I get to just sit down. But, yeah. So my originals for best trilogy was going to be either The Godfather, Star Wars, or Lord of the Rings. The Godfather and Lord of the Rings are like two trilogies. I think they're the only two trilogies where every movie was nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. Not that means anything, but Lord of the Rings is like I think it's a perfect trilogy from beginning to end. If they take 1,000 pages worth of stuff, and they just went out and it almost seems like they travelled to this place and filmed this happening. And it was all done in New Zealand, so if you're from New Zealand, it might not seem like that because it might be like, oh no, that's just over there. I can see it from here. But for me, who's never been to New Zealand, I thought it was incredible. And it's the only time that I know where they make movies back to back and it wasn't a total train wreck. Besides maybe Kill Bill. I think the cinematography is amazing. I think that the CGI was used well. I think it's great. I love Lord of the Rings. You do not care for the Lord of the Rings, but you have seen it.
Yeah, I went to see it at the cinema when each of the films came out.
I think it was the first. It set the trend for like big blockbusters coming out at Christmas, I think.
Right. Well, yeah, I watched it and I was bored by every film. Like I wanted to go to sleep each time. I didn't enjoy. Like when I heard that, I remember people talking about it in class and stuff and being like, "Oh, it's really good." And I remember specific things that they mentioned, like, "Oh, wait until you see this." And then each time I would kind of go in there feeling a bit more, like, all right, this actually might be quite good, and then just being so bored by it. But I was a kid, so I went back and I watched it last year, the year before, and felt kind of exactly the same.
Yeah, but you also didn't like Empire Strikes Back because you thought it was boring. You turned it off early on.
No, this is a factual. This is a fact.
Right, cool. Moving on. So the next one is the Dark Knight trilogy, which I was going to put as my most satisfying ending. I don't think the Lord of the Rings has the most satisfying ending because it has like 12 endings. But the Dark Knight trilogy is, I think, it's the best set of superhero movies or comic book adaptations that have ever been made. I watch them once or twice a year, and I love them every single time. They have, do you know the beginning of the Dark Knight when they have that bank heist?
Yeah.
That's it's all shot in IMAX, so they do the same in The Dark Knight Rises, where they do the opening scene all filmed in IMAX, and it's like this incredible, like, big landscape type thing. And in the third one, it's a big aerial scene where the villains hijack like a small plane, and it was all filmed. They had a real plane. They had a real plane hanging upside down where the tail had been blown off, and like even if you don't watch the movies and you don't love Batman, watch the. Just watch those opening scenes because I think they're amazing.
Why didn't they do the whole movie in IMAX?
Well, you can't film up close in IMAX because the cameras are so big; they make a huge amount of noise. So you can't really record character scenes in IMAX, because you can't hear the characters talking. There's a huge amount of background noise.
Right,
That's why
enough.
it's normally done for like big shots.
Is IMAX not just like a really high quality video recording?
There are different types of cameras. At the time when they did the Dark Knight Rises, there were only or maybe it was the Dark Knight. There were only half a dozen IMAX cameras in existence, and Christopher Nolan broke one.
I think you're expecting some sort of shocked reaction, but
Well, it's a big deal. Like these cameras are hugely expensive, and there's only a couple of them in existence, and he breaks one of them. Anyway, you would think somebody with a film degree would know what IMAX was, but doesn't matter. The best one I would say is The Dark Knight. My favorite is Batman Begins. Although Batman Begins is like the origin movie of origin movies. Like you don't see him in the cape and cowl for the first hour, but it basically tries to take the story of a superhero and ground it in reality. You find out why he is the way he is. You get an origin to the Batmobile, why the Batmobile exists and isn't ridiculous, why the gadgets exist, and why he uses the bat as a symbol, why he dresses up and doesn't just go out and beat people up. It's great. I absolutely love it. It's just incredible. And Christopher Nolan doesn't really know how to make a bad film, I think. It does, yeah. And I like if you like his other films, like if you like Inception or Memento. Actually, maybe Insomnia is not a fantastic film, but or like if you like these other films, like it is. I think it stands up as one of the best trilogies of all time, and I think you could. I think it'll outlast other superhero movies as well. So I think if you fast forward 25 years, this will still be a testament to great superhero movies, whereas like Iron Man and the Avengers might not be. But it's my favorite. I love it.
There's ones like Spider-Man where I just don't like the concept of it at all. It just seems I don't want to say the word silly because it sounds like I don't want to be condescending in any way, but it's just like not. It's just too much into the genre, right?
But like
But
you
something
you
something
stood up
like
as saying a movie about Santa Claus was incredible.
yes, fair enough. The word that I'm trying to think of is like is like, you know, a line where on one side of the line you have something that is not too strong, and on the other end you have something which is really strong. What's that called?
I'm enjoying watching you struggle.
Do you know the word do you know what I'm searching for? I think you do. Honestly, like, if I try and think of a word, that's it. It just goes out of my head.
Right,
It's really
so
annoying.
let's wrap up.
No, look, I'm trying to
No,
make a
let's
point.
wrap up. You can't suspend disbelief enough to grab superhero movies, and you just hate them because you're biased and you're
No.
closed-minded, and you'd rather watch a movie where a guy takes over the mantle of Santa Claus than someone who dedicates his life to defending crime in a city. That's what you're saying?
No.
Yep. Right.
I find it difficult to dictate why I don't like
Dictate,
superhero
communicate, or
movies.
articulate.
Articulate. I find it difficult to articulate well why I don't like superhero movies and what exactly it is about them I don't like. But I think that they come on a scale. And on one end of the scale, you have things which are a bit more acceptable, which
Acceptable how?
like things that I don't mind as much watching. And that is kind of like
Acceptable.
Batman. And on the other side, you have movies like Spider-Man, which are just like too strong, right? And so I think that Batman will probably do better long term, or like be more long lasting for people because it's weaker on that scale, and so, you know, more aimed at a general audience, maybe. I don't know.
I think where those.
It's difficult for me to make a point where you're sitting there laughing.
I know. I think where the Dark Knight trilogy really, really stands up is that Christopher Nolan did his homework in trying to make this, trying to make you believe that this could actually happen. So the reason that I love Batman Begins, even though it is like a maximum origin story, is that you really buy into where the character comes from. So like when you do have to make that leap from to where this guy goes from just being a normal person to being a man in a costume who jumps around the rooftops of some city, and some weird stuff happens, you as an audience buy into that because the story has gripped you up until that point that it, like, that payoff is kind of okay. So it's a little bit like in Inception, where the story kind of grabs you, and then when it kind of throws you off the deep end, and like when they're in Paris and the street lifts up and stuff, and they start doing that weird dream thing, you go, all right, I'm in, because the story grips you enough and it brings you in. But you understand why people love those characters, because like they.
Yeah, I understand why people like it. Of course, I'm just saying that I don't. But I think if you're talking about something that's going to have better long-term success, I think things which are more appealing to more people are definitely going to do better.
But you also have
said that, if you have like a really hardcore fan base who absolutely loves Spider-Man because it's like really hardcore, let's say, then you know, you could say that one does better long term because
Spider-Man,
their fans go on
the first
about
Spider-Man movie is like the fourth highest grossing superhero film of all time.
Okay, well, I have no idea what I'm talking about here. I'm just
the Spider-Man movies, I mean, like,
on something I have no idea about.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So should we wrap up?
Yeah.
So if you have any opinions on trilogies and you think that I was talking out my arse, let us know. You can get in touch with us. You can find all the links to get in touch with us at mumblyhour.com/7, and all the links will be there. All the movies that we've been talked about will be there, and you can email us at mumblyhour@gmail.com, and you can get us at Twitter at mumblyhour, and we're both linked from there also. Do you have anything else to say?
Nope.
Did I miss anything?
Nope. Sounds good to me.
Sweet. Done. I can hit stop.